on, there's the Zaya, but for the wrong player, for Opal in this case. And finally, Cho'Gath 3 will be coming out. So Opal, well, he came in the shop anyway. Opal showcasing the power of this Kog'Maw, where if you're missing a key upgrade, you can just level up, find a way, and print those one cost later on.
Yeah, and that's having that option is so fantastic, particularly like in this lobby where you're contesting with other players. Unfortunately, Fujiwara hasn't had the room to be able to do that kind of thing at all. As Sappho plows the last bit of money in, we can see on the right-hand side, our players at the bottom are keeping everything in as Sappho will hit the 3-star Teemo in place. Getting the last bit in to make sure the 4 trick shots on the line. Sappho seems to be in a decent spot. Electro, as we noted before, still with a little bit of room left to grow in this composition, might still be vulnerable.
Good sign for Sappho. Electro has not used up all his gold to upgrade his board just yet, so this should be a win. But obviously the itemization on Teemo is not ideal. Last Whisper, Titan Resolve is not the itemization you want to see on what is an AP carry. Kai'Sa cleans up, wins the fight for Sappho. He does stay alive in the end. Opal and Kubikson also fighting for their lives, especially Opal, who's on 1 life here. And can the Kog'Maw clutch up, Peter? Looks like he can.
Oh boy. Fujiwara will be our first person eliminated. He leaves the first game without ever finding who's 2-star Kai'Sa. And while for Sappho, you're right, the route is open. No, we'll take that back. He's actually ended up selling the Kai'Sas in the end, perhaps realizing the damage which he needed to do had already been done.
It came after that last loss that put him down to 7 HP. Can't really play for this now. I'm not stable enough, it seems like. I have to play for finding a Silas 2 instead. So I had to sell that, I think, more ambitious game plan to try and just find a top 4 in this game instead.
So, wonderful job there by our observers to highlight for us for Kubikson, of course, being a little slowed down on his path to Zyra 3 thanks to Electro running the Story Weaver in this game, but does finally manage to get the 3-star online, perhaps a little later than he would have liked. For Opal, similar situation, has at least got most of his board online. The Lilia fully itemized as well as the Kog'Maw, but still only at 1 star so far.
Much better items on the Teemo here for that TG roll for Sappho's board with a Morello, having both the anti-heal on the Morello and the Sunfiber, the Galio already taken down. Kai'Sa stunned up into the air, attacked by the Cho'Gath here as well. That should be it, unless the Teemo can do it by himself, but he can't. Kog'Maw cleans up, and Opal turns a game where I think he should have been 7th or 8th guaranteed, considering the misfortune with the Elune encounter, is now at the very least a guaranteed top 6.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what we can do here, but Sappho actually goes out as of the previous round. Wow, I'm astonished. It felt like Sappho had pretty much everything he needed, but I guess it was everything but the HP to soak a loss.
It was just the itemization was not ideal. Slamming Sunfire, not being able to have Morello on Teemo, for example. It's a Teemo 3 with a TG where you're at the mercy of the rolls to find the right itemization. I think Teemo, especially in these late game fights, sometimes out damages Zaya 2 and Kai'Sa 2, even if they have full items as well. So Teemo is kind of secretly one of the stars of this trick shot comp in the late game, where the fights could be very long, depending on what comps you're facing.
Well, let's see if Opal can go any further. Again, the last remaining player on a single life in the lobby. On the other side, the ghostly Zyra board, which of course will build up those ghosts and be able to take down those Omega units a lot more easily than other compositions could do. Frontline starting to get into a little bit of trouble. Zyra getting taken out, though, of course, is a disaster, but Kubikson does have the HP to soak this one.
And for Paul as well, one of the things that really turned things around in terms of his fortune is the fact that he found the Mana Zane on the Lilia, plus the Magic Wand is his last augment, giving her some extra AP with the extra 3rd cast coming in much more often, thanks to Mana Zane early on into the fights, adding that little bit of extra oomph at the beginning of the fight and letting Kog'Maw clean up at the end of the fights.
But we do have a mythic emblem for Opal, so getting the little bit of good fortune as much as the encounters have been against them this time around. We'll see if any other players decide to go for anything spicy here. Having the extra component there should hopefully let them pick up any stray bits and pieces they've got hanging around, as Arzu at the very tail end picking up the Invoker emblem. Very interesting. Hopefully you get to see what he's got that intended for that longer term, but the Mythic emblem coming in here to help pump up a lot more power for Opal.
Big upgrades for both players. Electro finds the upgrade on the Rakan. We saw hovered there in the shop for Opal, the upgrade on the Lilia, which I just mentioned, I think is way more important for Kog'Maw reroll in the late game than she was the very start of the set, especially with the Mana Zane setup that Opal has right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for Opal now with Kubikson down to just 1 life and Klakonan also possibly in the same spot as well, this could go very poorly. With the contested duelist line, we'll have the Lee Sin run right into the Zyra. If he can't sustain for all this damage, and he cannot, the composition falls apart quickly, and Kabixon stays alive, keeping around the right-hand side for Apal to see if he makes it through as well.
Electro taking down a notch, but has already spent all of his gold here as well. So we're going to see pretty much every single player now committing all their gold, trying to play for placement, especially considering the HP totals that we see right now, right, Peter? 16 for Gakornin at 3rd, and then all the way down to just 7 for Opal currently in 6th place.
Yeah, it's very, very tight here with only Arzu and Electro keeping their heads above water. Kono hoping for just a little bit more power, commits and everything, as do all of our players, with the exception of barely Gakornin keeping everything in the bank. It's been a real tooth and nail battle for our players. They will be getting reseeded after round 2, but here in our first 2 lobbies, we'll be playing against each other over and over. Gakornin with the Warden sniper board, the throwback composition that's picked up popularity. We'll see if the front line can hold long enough, because the Kiana's broken through.
And that's a big, big deal. So much extra DPS coming in from Kiana, who is a 2 cost. You don't expect to be carrying these fights, but sometimes she just completely takes over. And we're seeing the Ashe trying her absolute best, but it's just not enough from Gakornin. Going to be taken down to very little HP, 2 to be precise, but still in it. Kubikson, Opal taken out. They fill out the bottom 4. And Turkey doing so well in this very first game.
Yeah, and of course, for anyone who hasn't been with us all season, you wouldn't have seen that in our very first GSC of the set, Darkest, they almost managed to claim the first GSC title ever for Turkey. Coming into today's event, of course, as mentioned before, getting the Turkish player most known for going to the Global Championship. Maybe we're starting to see the beginnings of something good developing here for Turkey to build out their legacy as a region rather than as a single big player.
Especially surprising, and I think a great thing to see Electro doing so well in this game 1, coming from the Turkish ladder alongside Arat. Some players in EMEA, they don't really rate the Turkish ladder too strongly when players qualify from the ladder. I think they're usually players that are underrated coming into EMEA finals. So a good start for Electro, maybe even for Arat in his lobby, could be a really good sign for Turkey. Doing well, as you're mentioning, as an entire region, not just those 1 or 2 breakout players.
So checking in on the HP again, Arzu, Electro, both looking healthy. Clemo and Gakornin on the single life. Interesting to see Gakornin actually holding back a lot of his bank balance. I think he has a lot of his board online already. Keep an eye on him on the right-hand side. Going up against the Reaper board, it is kind of what we expected a little bit. Going duelist early on, then switch across to the popular Reaper board. But we see the Kane gets into the backline, onto the Ashe, deletes. And that's going to always be the big problem when Reapers are meta.
Especially for someone like Arzu, who's just an absolute beast when it comes to melee bruiser lines. He is someone who, if I faced him on ladder, he was always playing melee bruisers across the last few sets. At the start of this set, Yone pretty much every single game when Yone was incredibly strong. And he's found a way to play Reapers uncontested in this game. One of his comfort comps, his comfort game plans in general. He knows how to position, he knows how to min-max and really get the most out of both Yone and Kane here.
Yeah, I definitely think it's one of those more challenging things, isn't it, for our players? You know, to be able to get that melee pathing through what will be a morass of a front line. Keeping an eye out on Electro, though. On the right-hand side, the Story Weaver board is very strong indeed. Our 2 remaining players, Electro from Turkey, Arzu from Tunisia, looking for those big casts. We've got the Aurelia in the mix as well. I'm just curious to see, how much the Kale can take out with a single blow.
And the positioning is really important there. I think overall, Story Weavers has a very good matchup into Reapers, because the Reapers end up clumping and Kale can just have so much DPS off of a single cast, as you're mentioning. We're seeing Arzu's positioning, trying to have Kane on the left side and trying to have him wrap around without being targeted by the Kale and by the Aurelia and by the Zoe at all at the beginning. Still not quite able to turn the fight in his favor. Overall, he is the David versus the Goliath when it comes to the matchup, but we'll see if any kind of positioning changes, last-minute swaps could potentially turn things in his favor.
And it's always such a tough thing, isn't it, when you're going up against the Kale, who does such a lot of AoE damage in a small area, and you're playing a melee composition where your units are just going to clump up around the center where Electro has kept the bulk of his defensive line. I think you're right, though. These next 3 rounds, they're going to be testing. And of course, Silas does have the ability to punch through and get into the backline. It doesn't look he does quite enough damage, though, to take that backline out by himself.
The Kane, though.
Maybe the Kane, but it's not quite good enough.
I think the writing might be on the wall. I'm not sure there's really anything you can do at this point. Very little gold to work with. Maybe this carousel could somehow Well, I think it'll change more things in favor of Electro. Story Weaver emblem found here as well. I believe there's still an Aurelia 2 upgrade that can be found for Electro with a little bit of extra gold. TG as well here just is a pickup in the end for Electro. All in all, I think a very tough mountain to climb here in terms of the matchup itself.
Yeah, I'm just trying to spot out here just the kind of differences that can make. I mean, right now Arzu very right-centered in his push. I don't know if maybe just switching everything across the other side would be enough for a difference.
Just really great itemization on the Aurelia here as well. I think Arzu mostly played for a top 4. They didn't try and have the ultimate cap Reaper's comp with a Yone 3 or a Kindred 3, for example. It's just really the Kayn doing most of the work. He's accomplished that. He's made top 4, top 2 even. But will be very hard to play against Electro, who we remember was saving so much gold in stage 4 trying to play for max cap.
All right, we do see the switcheroo. Arzu moving to the far side of the board to try and break through what has so far been an unbreakable line. The Kale up to not her full form, but pretty damn strong. It just proves to be a little bit too tough. And it will be Turkey taking the first on-stream lobby of the EMEA Regional Finals for Inkborn Fables. This is a very good sign, I think, David, of things to come.
Especially for the momentum for a player like Electro that I mentioned earlier. When you're coming from Turkish ladder, you're coming from Russian ladder, you're underrated by most of your competitors, you're not respected as much. To come in and get it first in the very first game, your own, I think, mental fortitude coming to the next 11 games across these 2 days will be that much higher.
And of course, congratulations to Arzu for managing to bring that all the way to the end. I like that he was, still fighting until he was finally put in the ground there. But of course, we are only getting started here in our first of our 3 days of the EMEA Regional Finals. We'll be ahead to break. We'll be hearing from Taplast during that break, and then we'll have our analyst test to break down game number 1. We'll see you in a few minutes' time.
I'm 22 years old and I am gonna be the Set 11 Golden Spatula Cup 2 winner. Inkborn Fables has been my favorite set probably. Close second is Set 6 and 6.5. Encounters have been pretty fun for most of it, but some of it should be deleted in my opinion. Yes, I am down to playing TFT offline events. I am maybe going to the one in Poland this year as well. I was actually planning to go to the Cactus Land this year, but I couldn't make it, unfortunately. For people who want to qualify for GSCs, I would recommend to participate in all the open qualifiers, including the TRCs, and don't get too nervous about qualifying from ladder. My goal in competitive TFT is to win everything, to win GSC, win Rising Legends Finals, and then win Worlds as well. Thanks for all the support I get from the Hungarian community and from my family and from Twitch chatters. I would like to shout out Brazila and Stylat for making the Hungarian community happen. And I would also like to shout out to Sven, the guy I'm kind of practicing with, but it's usually just exchanging ideas on Discord.
Welcome back here at the analyst desk of our EMEA finals. And after that game, I feel like, Matt, our predictions became reality. Spot on with the meta talks today.
Yeah, real convenient that we had that one already queued up, our very first game, the Storyweaver win. And it came pretty much how we expected it and how we hit it at the top of the show. You know, it's so hard to get that full vertical of the 7 Storyweavers unless you're gifted a Storyweaver crest at the 4-2 augment, able to cap out that board pretty quickly, then able to find the Aurelia in the late game with the Vampiric Scepter, no less. Absolute biss on her. So just an absolute clinic being put on by Electro. That's how you play Storyweavers, in case you were curious.
Yeah, a very interesting touch point between both of the players in our top 2 with Asu as well as Electro, right, is the fact that they both picked up that Golden Remover augment as their free to pick up while they were on win streak, really trying to capitalize on the tempo. For Asu, it meant making great use of that early duelist setup that he had, being able to just transfer items around in any way he saw fit, and also, again, being able to kind of juggle around those TGs on Electro's side of the field whenever something wasn't rolled that was beneficial for another unit, just being able to transfer that TG over, and that was just like great mechanical play.
Yeah, honestly, I am a little bit a Reaper-coded brain because, of course, it is a 3-cost reroll that goes into a backline, and as an old assassin enjoyer, that just makes my brain very happy. But I'm glad to see that Arzu was feeling the same way about it. I really enjoyed that we had 2 players kind of on the duelist angle, which is rare enough, one on the extended duel, and then the other one coming in on Keeper says, okay, the other person is so streamlined into duelists. Reaper is open. I'll go there instead. I'll use that Golden Remover you mentioned there, Rita. And we even saw some item holding on a Silas, which is rare enough for a Kindred, so a little bit inverted. Took a while to get that Kindred onto the board, but in the end, able to max that one out. Perfect items all throughout, so really, really cool to see from Arzu.
And we just saw 2 quick clips here mechanically that was actually very important to kind of note here. We saw Asu pick up his orb from the Tam Kenshin counter, but more importantly, we also saw Opal holding on to the last orb from Missing Connections, which was the Cogmore orb. So the second he found that 8th copy of Cogmore, he had that 3-star Cogmore locked down. And as David and Peter were talking about on the cast, being able to kind of make that a stabilization point, going from 8th to 6th.
I want to hit the bottom of the table really quick as well, because we saw Sappho opening with the Fortune Emblem, able to hit 5 Fortune at 2-5, which in most lobbies is going to be a guaranteed win. But Mujiwara was also on the line. They both went for that Fortune into Trickshot. Both of them went for Little Buddies. And Sappho, despite holding 6 Kaisas to the 1 of Mujiwara, was not able to turn that into a victory. You know, just not enough of an advantage. As was mentioned on the cast, the TG Teemo, not exactly Biss for the secondary or arguably primary carry for that composition. So both of them went out 7th and 8th. So just really unfortunate game for what seemed like a strong line individually for both of them.
Yeah, really turn that fortune into misfortune, right? Like that's a really rough one for sure here. But also, speaking of rough ones here, the start for the
like
bottom half of the
joke.
table.
Yeah, that was a rough one. But
like Germany versus Spain later, also a rough one for Germany, right? No,
that's not a rough one. Danish person being upset retrospectively, I will say. But I'm pretty happy looking at our